Positioning is one of the most important skills to have as a good Overwatch player, but it can be confusing and overwhelming to know exactly where to position yourself sometimes. I'm going to teach you a clear and straightforward method to come up with a good position every single time. In this video, I'm going to give you 3 simple guidelines for a good position. Then I'll go over some gameplay to highlight both good and bad examples of positioning. And then at the end, I'll give you an easy game plan on how to actually practice and apply these methods in your games right away. So many times I feel like people mention that they need to work on their positioning or that their positioning's bad or whatever, but they never actually define what a good position is. So let's do that. Generally speaking, a good position on Ana is one that has a good sightline of preferably both your team and the enemy team, has decent natural cover, and allows you to play at your optimal range. And in this case, Ana would like to play at longer ranges because of how her rifle works. You'd also want to think about what heroes the enemy has when considering your range. For example, you'd want to stay much further away from a Reaper than you would a Widowmaker. And these 3 things are all pretty much equally important to a good position. Another thing to think about is taking a position that meets these requirements, but is also an off angle, meaning an angle that is split from most of your team. But sometimes this can be difficult depending on the map or the position the rest of your team is playing at. There can be other things to consider, like cooldowns for instance, but if you follow these 3 simple guidelines, you'll be in a good position to do your job most of the time. Let's get into some gameplay. Okay, so starting out here, I really like this position to start with because it has a good sightline of my teammates and the enemies. It has good cover with the tower in the middle. And I'm playing my range just far away. I will note it's not on an off angle, so it's not the best position it could be, but that's quite hard to find on this map while still meeting the other criteria. So I want you to notice like how I move forwards and backwards based on the status of the fight. So their Malga's dead and my Winston pushed up, so I try to push up with them to try to be more aggressive. But as my Winston comes back, I move back because I don't want to get caught out. Now it might be tempting to push up when my Echo copies, but I'll be honest, it's not that great of a copy, and he kind of just wants to sit there and at the choke like we were already doing. So I stay back and just try to support him while he pushes back the enemy. Now if you watch the Malga push up here, this is exactly why you want to play to your range, because you don't want to get caught out when the Malga pushes up on you. You want to give yourself time to rotate away when the enemy tries to close the distance, which is why I'm rotating back into this room. It gives me good cover, a good sightline, and I'm playing in my range. So once I see my Winston go back in, I'm going to push up to where I was at the beginning of this game because of the reasons that I've been going over in this video so far. And I try to move forward and back based on the flow of the fight. So my Winston jumps back, so I come back to support him while the enemy pushes up. And then once my Winston goes back in, I should rotate back to the position I was earlier so that I can have a good sightline on the enemy as well. But I end up actually not doing that, which is pretty bad because it means I'm not applying pressure on the enemy, which I actually think leads to some of my teammates' deaths here. Now we're down 2. We have the Nano Echo, but they just use Cage. So we're not winning this fight, so I'm gonna back up and just kite the Malga. So I go back and take this position with some nice cover so I can still poke at the Malga, but still be safe if I get into some big danger here. Luckily my Winston comes back, and so I can be a little more aggressive. Now I would take this left side here before my Winston jumps in if I had my grenade, but I don't. So I play it safe until he jumps in, and he dies anyways, so I back out and try to live. Now this is a good position because I'm playing definitely to my range. I have a great sightline and I can use this high ground as cover if I just back up and crouch. Another thing you have to consider when you're picking your positions is what your biggest threats are. Who can close the distance on you to make your good position turn into a bad position? In this case, it's Winston right here, so I sleep him. And against dive threats, you have 2 options. You can either rotate away from the dive before it happens, which is the less aggressive option, or you can hold the cooldown to save yourself from the dive. So in this case, I saved my sleep for the Winston in order to peel for myself, and then we ended up killing him. So since a few enemies are dead and my team is all the way pushed up, I should really have jumped off a long time ago to support them, just in good practice. but I'm a little late. It doesn't matter because my team comes back anyway, but it's good practice just to rotate with your team if you can do so safely. Now here I do something that's a little bit high risk, high reward. Since I have my grenade, I throw one at the Ashe and I take a shot or two at her to try to get a kill, which we actually do. But notice how I only do that when I have my nade and I have good cover. And again, I'm just playing this angle because I know I have a good sightline for my team and the enemy team. I have amazing cover and I'm playing to my range. And now that I know that they have an echo, that's another threat I need to take into consideration when I take my positions and what cooldowns I save, because she's another character who can close the distance on me very quickly and make my position a bad one. So here I rotate towards my team in order to keep my range advantage because I know that they're running under the bridge or maybe coming up those stairs. I end up staying up here to try to support my team, but I use cover pretty poorly here and I might have died anyways even if I did use good cover. But in general, it's a good idea to try to make yourself as hard to kill as possible so that the enemy uses as many resources as possible, and then your team might be able to clean up because of the resource advantage that they have. Now coming into this last fight, I opt to go high ground because I know that their echo's dead. So the only character that can really dive me from up here is Winston. So I have to stick up here and save my sleep dart in case he comes up here. But otherwise, I just stick up here with my good sightline, decent cover, and just shoot. So starting out on attack here, the main angle is really the one that I want to take because it's a long sightline with some cover, but I don't want to peek it because the enemies already control that space. So there's two things that I can do. I can take an angle that's not contested, like the room where my Winston is right now, or I can wait for an opening when my team goes in like I do here. And then I immediately take another angle here and land a huge nade on the back line. And then I get poked out and leave. The Sigma pushes up on me and I have to respect that, so I'm going to take some cover back in this room and try to find another angle to poke from. Landed a nice nade on the Sigma, so I'm going to take this angle up here with some good cover in this room and just shoot at the enemies. Now, since I'm already behind them and they probably don't know I'm here, I go for something a little higher risk, high reward, and it ends up working out, but I definitely would only recommend this if you have your cooldowns. Otherwise, it's very risky. A little bit of a sloppy cover usage from me here, but we actually lose this fight, so I back out so we can go back in as 5. Now I got super sloppy with my cover usage here and I almost die for it. 1 HP, that's why it's so important to be really tight with your cover. Now keeping with the positioning theme, I notice that my cast is in a good position and deal damage, so that's why I end up nanoing in here. Now I choose to go up the stairs here because I know it's going to give me a great sightline on my team and where the enemy team will be. And I have great cover with the room here. So I end up playing this part really poorly. I walk forward into the Sigma instead of using the cover that I had, and I totally get wrecked by him. What I should have done is to gone back into the room to try to avoid as much damage as I could. Now, this attack is pretty rough. You're going to see me struggle to take a good angle with a nice sight line on both my team and the other team here. I actually get poked out a lot, and it's really hard for me to do anything because they just have such a good high ground advantage. So what I actually need to do here is be much more creative than I am. You can see me try to do something here by going up these stairs, but I don't actually commit to anything super aggressive. I really need to look for an angle where I'm safe and can throw a good nade. I tried to chuck one up there, but it doesn't really get much, and I'm playing cover really poorly here as well, you know? The Sigma's poking me out, and I'm just I don't know where I am, and I get poked out, and I just die, fall over. Here I have an okay sightline on my team, but I don't really have anything on the enemy, and I actually get poked out anyway by the Sigma, even though I don't really have a way to damage them. I need to be taking a more aggressive angle, perhaps on the stairs with cover, so that I can shoot back at the enemy, but still hide from the damage that I'm taking. And I actually end up swapping to Kiriko here because I'm having such a hard time. I think I could have made this work with Ana by just being more aggressive and being more creative with my angles, but I resorted for the easy option and just went Kiriko, and I still actually get jump scared by the Sojourn anyways. But yeah, for the rest of this game, I kind of just don't really get much done, and this is definitely the part of the game where I could have played better, and I kind of got carried by my team here, I'm not gonna lie. It was very plausible that we just get stuck at that choke the entire game and lose, even though we had a good first hold. So that really highlights like how important it is to take angles and do damage and have good sight lines, but also play safe with cover. Alright, so hopefully that gives you a better idea of how to determine if your positioning is good or not, but how can you actively improve this skill? Map knowledge can be helpful in the sense of knowing what options you have when playing on a particular map. If you want to get familiar with more options for a certain map, I would encourage you to go into a custom game and just run around and discover all the positions that the map has to offer, especially the common areas where fights break out. But something very important to keep in mind when doing this is to not memorize good positions, because good positions are always contextual. Notice that the 3 guidelines for a good position all completely revolve around where your teammates and enemies are at that moment. A good sightline is only good if you can see your teammates or enemies. Playing your range has to do with the distance between you and the enemies, and cover is really only cover if it breaks the sightline with the enemies. These things constantly change and evolve throughout a game and will be different every game depending on what heroes the enemy are running and what they decide to do. So do not memorize good positions. Actively think about if the position you are in meets the criteria. And if not, think about where on the map you could rotate to that would give you an advantage. Now, thinking about these things can be really hard mid-game. The trick is to only think about your positioning, not your aim, not your cooldowns, ultimate usage, even whether you win or lose the game. Heck, even whether you win or lose the fight. Focus only on positioning, nothing else. It's like that episode of SpongeBob where he forgets about everything except fine dining and how to breathe.
It's as if all he knows is fine dining and breathing.
That needs to be you with positioning. This way, we don't get distracted by other things that aren't contributing to us actually getting better. There's so many things that happen in Overwatch at once that it's hard to focus on improving rather than just playing your best. I want to make a whole video in the future that goes in depth on how to laser focus on improvement, so feel free to subscribe if that's something you'd like to see in the future. Lastly, the goal is to implement good positioning into our gameplay so we don't have to think about it at all, like an autopilot. But to get to that place, we need to think about it a lot, and that means it's okay to go slowly. Make sure you are putting in enough thought into your positions and focus on trying to get the right position rather than doing it as fast as possible. The more you do it, the faster you will get, and everything will start clicking into place until eventually you start doing it automatically. Now, a little disclaimer here, you will lose games by practicing this way, but as you improve, you will win those games back and more. Remember to focus on the improvement rather than the silly little rank icon that is supposed to represent your skill. Reward yourself for getting better and learning rather than depending on the game to reward you for arbitrary wins or losses. That's all I have for this video. If you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment, or you can ask me live at twitch.tv/Sylsii every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 8 p.m. CST. Thanks for watching.